Hi, everyone. I'm so excited about today. And before I get to it, I want to tell you this Instagram Live is brought to you by Eleanor's Place in Atlanta. One of my good friends, Jennifer Morgan, created this incredible workspace for women. It's co-work space. It's a brilliant idea and it's so warm and lovely, as you can see. But the kids were crazy this morning at home. I knew that I would never be able to get this accomplished if I was at home. So thank you, Eleanor's Place, for being a space for women. Speaking of women, I am joined today by a powerhouse of a female, Paula Faris. I am so thrilled to welcome her onto because she represents really everything that this show is about. It's about empowering women, educating, inspiring, and leaving people fuller. Paula, hi. It is so good to see you.
It is so good to see you, Lynn. Can you hear me okay? Can you see me okay?
I can, and I love your at-home set for your podcast. This is the new world I've entered into, following an incredible career at ABC News. And you've written this book called Out, which is all about this vision to leave this dream job at ABC and really answer the calling that you had. But before I get to the questions that I'm dying to ask you, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I did. Addie's the only one that, well, we don't know if she had COVID or not. This is our doggie. This is Addison. Yes. I'm telling you, having a dog, especially during COVID, has been therapy. She's been one of the best things for our family. My face must taste so good today. Wow. Hi, Addison. Can you say hi to everybody? Addie. We're doing great though. Lynn, everyone, my sister had it, my niece had it, there were 6 of us that had it. My middle child, I don't know. We need to study his immune system because he was exposed to all of us. And I mean, we're the type of family, we're like drinking after one another. Somehow he didn't get it. He was tested 4 times. He's the only one that didn't get it, but we're feeling a lot better, about 95%. Thank you for asking.
Congratulations on your big move. You have completely transformed your life, and it is something that's inspiration to me. I've seen what you've done, and it's really incredible. I give you so much credit for taking your life into your own hands. You moved to South Carolina.
I did, yeah. It was all a little unexpected, for sure.
Yeah. So how did this come to be?
All right. So, you mentioned the book. So a couple of years ago, I pumped the brakes when I was anchoring Good Morning America weekends and The View. And I just knew I needed to get my life back because I was completely addicted to work and lost my identity in it. And the person that I claimed I was clashing with the choices that I was making. So that was a couple years ago. Okay. So I slowed down at ABC and, I stepped into a space where I was working Monday through Friday. I launched a faith podcast. Well, then, last year, things ended with ABC. So some of the decisions were mine and some of them weren't. And like many other people during COVID, struggling to, once again, what's next? Unexpected change can be really hard. We came down to South Carolina. My sister lives across the street from us.
Oh.
And she had moved here about 7-8 years ago. And we had lived in the Northeast, and every time we came down, we're like, it is so beautiful in this area. We're in the upstate of South Carolina, so we're by the mountains and the water. It's just a gorgeous place to live. And coming from Michigan, which is where I'm from, I still love a change of season. I love greenery. I love the water and the mountains. So anyway, we said, okay, one day we're going to live in South Carolina. Let's buy a vacation/rental. And so that's what we had done. And we came down here last March, and we thought we would be here for a couple of weeks. We only packed what we thought. We actually left a year ago tomorrow, I think it is, or a year ago on Saturday. We got in the car. We thought we'd be here 2 weeks, and we just felt at peace that this is where we were supposed to stay. I knew at that point that things were ending with ABC already. I didn't know what was next with my husband's job, but we just felt this peace, Lynn, that we were supposed to stay here, even though it didn't totally make sense to us. And it didn't make sense to other people, but we just were like, we're going to follow this piece that we're supposed to stay here. And it's been amazing to see doors open up. And, for the first time in my life, it's always been hard to reconcile those two hats of being a mom and being a career woman. And for the first time in my life, I've really been able to lean into that, to make sure that instead of my kids fitting into career, everything that I'm able to do now has to fit into me being a mom first. And I've never had the opportunity to do that. So it's been a huge blessing. Again, some of the change was not our choice, but it's all worked out. It's all worked out better than I could have ever have imagined. And it put us on this path that was painful, but the path that we needed to be on. And it's worked out really beautifully.
I'm so happy for you. When you talk about that peace that you felt, it seems it's based so much in your faith. That's really what your book is about. Called Out is leaving those dream jobs for that calling that you really felt. I love that Max Lucado did the foreword. He's been on All Good Things, and he was a complete
awesome.
Inspiration. And let's talk a little bit, because you had your faith podcast, just how that translates to your life and how that's made things so much easier when you're taking these kinds of big plunges.
Well, I just think the faith podcast, I had launched a faith podcast when I was at ABC, and I'm no longer there. But I just really felt like I wanted to be able to tell stories that weren't told, in mainstream media. So often it's just the case when someone brings up their faith, whatever their faith may be, we don't really talk about it. And yet faith is a driving factor for so many of us, regardless of what our faith may be, right? So that's why I launched the Faith Podcast at ABC. And now I have a new podcast, which I've been given the opportunity to host. I'm super excited about it. And we're exploring a lot of those tenets of faith and calling, which you're called to do. But really, I want people to feel empowered and encouraged and entertained. So I'm having just like real honest conversations with people about inspirational aspects to their story. And I was able to launch that podcast. Are we in March still? Like 6 weeks ago? I can't even
Are we in 2020 or 2021? I know.
Yeah. And it's just it's been a way for me to kind of just shine my light in a space and again, do something that's really on my heart. And it allows me again I'm in my house right now, this small little studio. I can touch both sides of the studio with my wingspan right now, but it allows me to not compromise who I am for what I do, and to really lean into. I feel like we get so much of our purpose and identity tied up into what we do for a living, and I'm the most guilty among them. So this just allows me to get back to what I feel my true purpose is. And that's just to love people and to shine my light and to love God. And I can do that on a myriad of different platforms, whether it's a podcast or whether I'm launching a company later this summer, which I'm super excited about, and never thought that I would do that because I'm not a business person. I was a broadcaster, right? So, but just letting go of those fears and pushing into those fears of, will people see me in a different capacity? Will I see myself in a different capacity? Just pushing into those fears and taking what I can and my unique gifts and talents, which we all have, taking those to the to this table in a new space, in a new season, a new chapter.
I'm reading all of the comments of people chiming in how inspired they are and how they have followed your podcast, how much they're enjoying it. We'll talk about it's called the Paula Faris podcast and all the guests that you've had on. But before we do, I want to talk a little about what you mentioned about this career, broadcasting, which a lot of people glamorize and they just think, oh, this is the coolest thing. You're on TV. Oh my gosh. And they don't realize the sacrifice and sort of the ugly side of the business when it comes to what you have to give up.
Yeah.
And also giving up that career must have been a challenging decision.
Well, it's very much a career that's rooted in ego. And look, I look back, even now, I look back at pictures and I'm like, gosh, I had a really cool job, didn't I? And I'm so grateful for it. And the problem wasn't the career. The problem was me. I had placed my identity in it. I say it's great to love what you do. Just don't be defined by it. And when I pumped the brakes a couple of years ago and I didn't have these fancy titles anymore, I didn't know who I was outside of it. And so I think it's trying to find that balance, but always like peeling it back and remembering who you are outside of the doing. And I really had to get to a place where I realized who I was outside of the job. And TV can be super glamorous and it's pretty awesome, there are sacrifices involved. Yeah, you work lots of weekends and I wasn't able to go to a lot of weddings and, family vacations. I'd have to leave early or cut early. And, for me though, I let it become something that it shouldn't have. And I allowed it to become an addiction. And instead of remembering why I was placed where I was placed to shine my light, to bring my unique talents there, it became about me. I became very unhealthy in my rhythms. And so I got to a point where, yes, my personal values were totally clashing with my choices. And that was me. That's not an indication of TV. You can be on TV and you can be healthy. I was, unfortunately, work and the success and the spotlight and the accolade and all of that, the acknowledgement, it became my drug of choice. It did.
Yeah.
And I own up to that. And that was on me. And I just needed to get in a better space. I needed to see my husband. I needed to see my kids. I needed to be a mother. I'm just super grateful for, it was a really, really tough time of when I stepped away of, identity crisis, not knowing what was on the other side. What did I just do? I just totally killed my career and what's going on. I'm crazy, but it's really all worked out. And I feel like, especially during this pandemic, it prepared me to find out the parts of me that wouldn't change. And while so much of the things that we hold dear to us did change during the pandemic, I still know who I am. And I didn't experience any sort of identity crisis because I was forced a couple of years ago with my own personal crisis, to really find out who I was outside of the doing.
I think that's probably hard to say out loud and admit out loud. I give you so much credit for doing that because I think it challenges everybody who's watching to also ask themselves, are they being the best version of themselves? And are they being eaten up by whatever it is? And maybe it's not the accolades, maybe it's something else. Vino has a question here. He says, Paula, you have an amazing vibe.
Thank you.
How does one know it's his or her calling? Is it
Yeah.
intuition? Is it a deep feeling that you feel? I'm sure you talked about that in your book Called Out.
Yeah. I think, okay, so here's the thing. There are really 3 keys to vocational calling. And I even want to pull it back a little bit. What are you good? Ask yourself these 3 questions. What are you good at? And what do you love? And then what do trusted people notice that you're good at and you love? And what was his name? Vino. Okay, Vino. So let's say you are, like for me, I'll give you an example of what it is and what it's not. What am I good at? What do I love? What do other people notice that I'm good at and I love? I've always been super curious, nosy. My nickname growing up was Paula 20 Questions. I love to ask questions. I'm curious. I like to challenge people. I like to champion people. That made me a really good broadcaster, right? Taking those skills into that field. But that's also really serving me well in a new space. Being an entrepreneur, I'm taking my skill set of being curious and asking questions into a new arena, championing people. And so it's freed me to think, oh, I need to be a nurse. I need to be an astronaut. You don't have to be one thing for the rest of your life. Okay. Just let me say, you don't have to be one thing. You peel back those layers and find out your unique talents and gifts by answering those 3 questions: what you're good at, what you love, and what other people notice you're good at and you love. And then that gives you the opportunity and the permission to branch out and try new things in different seasons. But you're always taking what you're good at and what you love and what other people notice you're good at and you love into those different seasons and different chapters of life. So I want you to answer those 3 questions and have a friend around to help you answer the questions. And it might be you're a fixer. You're good at fixing. You love fixing. It might be that you're a creative. You're really good at being creative. You love being creative, and other people notice that you're really good at it. What it's not is, I'll just give you an example of one of my good friends. She's got a brilliant mind. She's in broadcasting. She works in the business side of broadcasting. And I had told her, I was like, you're a consultant. You need to be a consultant. You are so good at it. Other people have noticed you're good at it. You can consult business and personal affairs. And she says, I'm good at it, but I don't love it. Okay. So if you don't love it, you can be good at something and other people can say you're good at it. But if you don't love it, then that's not an area that you're being called to. Another example, my husband, just to give you an example of once you kind of figure out what you're good at and what you love and what other people notice you're good at and that you love, how it can be used in different areas. My husband is good at motivating. He's a leader. He's a coach. And those are his inherent skills, what he's good at and what he loves. He's in the way that it's translated into different arenas. And just like Vina, when you answer those questions, it can translate into different arenas. He was the captain of his college basketball team. Then he went on to coach college basketball using those gifts of leadership and motivating and speaking life into people. And now he manages a commercial real estate firm. And what is he doing? He's coaching, he's managing them, he's leading them. So he's used it like, it's like, okay, so you were a coach and now you're in. No, he's still relying on all those different on those gifts, those same gifts that he's been given. And he's given himself the permission to try new things in new arenas and new chapters and new seasons, but still relying on those gifts. But again, you have to be good at it, you have to love it, and trusted people in your life have to speak life into it and say, you're good at this and you love it. That's how you know.
I love that you talk about the trusted people. I actually have something I call the MTP, your most trusted person. And this is a person, like, even when I'm talking to people about how to be on TV and things like that, and you visualize that most trusted person and you're talking to that person. You are, you ask your most trusted person, who do you think I am? What's my personality? And so I think that's such a huge key to really harnessing what it is that you can be good at. Another question from Curtis Careers, talking about how intentional are you in building connections so you can inspire into spaces that you've never been before?
I think, connecting and networking is key. I mean, you don't ever want to burn bridges, but connection's a big part of the game. And I'm just kind of a natural networker and a natural galvanizer. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Enneagram, but I'm an 8. So that can be one of the most difficult numbers, but I'm trying to be the healthiest version of who I was created to be. And I'm just naturally inclined to connect people, to advocate for people, to champion people. When I get into my unhealthy space, I push people to the edge and then I push them off. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to stay in that space where I'm the healthiest version of myself, where I'm really advocating and giving, just trying to help people, connecting them. But I love to connect people. It's one of my, I think it's something that just comes very naturally to me, and it doesn't come naturally for everybody. But I think finding your lane, knowing your, in the workspace, your working frustrations and your working geniuses per se, what you're really good at in the workforce. I'm really good at getting people on the same page and making sure, I'm tenacious, and it made me a good broadcaster, right? But if you put me in a lane where you're like, we need you to just sit back in this room and think about and be really ethereal and think about all that, I'm not that. Okay. So I think just knowing, again, your strengths and your weaknesses, knowing your weaknesses as a strength and making sure that you're in your lane and that you're surrounding yourself with people that can kind of fill the gaps. And that's one thing that's been really important in this season of life for me, where I'm forming a company, and I want to be the type of leader that really empowers people and sets people up for success and makes sure that they are in their lane. But you only do that by really knowing who you are and where you thrive and where in the areas of struggle for you. So I want to make sure we're all working together. We know our position. We're playing to our strengths. And I know where my frustrations are, so I need people that can fill in that gap. I need wanderers and thinkers and people with good discernment, because I'm the type of person, I'm like, instead of ready, aim, fire, that's the joke about the Enneagram 8. We are fire, aim, ready. Like, we work backwards. I get in a new car, and I don't bother adjusting the mirrors. I just start driving, and then I start adjusting. That's my personality. So I need someone with discernment on my team, someone that's like, okay, that's not a really wise decision. So it's knowing your strengths and your weaknesses. And again, that's something that I'm really trying to be aware of in this new season.
I think that somebody, and I completely agree, who's chiming in saying, you just have a way of drawing people in. And your podcast is so relatable. And you're very real. you're Midwestern. I know that that's where it comes from. I'm from Ohio. And I'm like, oh yeah, she's from Michigan. That makes sense.
Yeah.
They listened to the one with Jenna Bush and said, I'm not a mother or a wife, but it spoke to her so deeply.
Oh, awesome.
Who are some of the guests that have really, I'm sure you're learning from each of them. It's like every time I have somebody on, I feel almost like it's filled me up in such an incredible way. So what are some of the things that you've taken away? You've had Michael Strahan, you've had Kathy Gifford. I mean, you just have a powerhouse lineup.
Yeah, I think everybody everyone, and look, you can say, oh, she's having, A-listers. No, I'm having people on that have an aspect of their story that's, that's not been told, that can really encourage and equip people and entertain. And I want to make sure that I want people to feel like they're that in the room with us, that they've like pulled up a chair and it's a super casual conversation. And, it's not edited, really. It's not highly edited. We're leaving in the warts and all of it, because I want you to feel like you're in the room. This week, and I think something that can speak to so many of us just coming from a time of isolation where we're disconnected from one another and lonely. I had Lauren Daigle on, and she's a Grammy winning artist, but she talks about a time in her life where in high school, she was 15. She'd been diagnosed with this virus and was forced to stay on what she calls homebound. She was isolated. So she was isolated for 2.5 years. She was in isolation. Something that we can all relate to, but reconciling, and this is something that I've had a hard time too. This is a tragic time. It's been a tragic time for so many of us, but yet we found opportunity. We found the gold in the garbage. We found beauty from ashes. It was in that space where she was isolated, disconnected at a time, a teenager, where she needs to be around people and she needs to be social. She had fallen into depression, and her mother noticed this and said, we're going to sign you up for singing lessons. She'd never taken a lesson. She didn't have a music program at her school. So she got connected with a vocal coach, and she's like, I will clean she was cleaning the toilets, cleaning his house just in exchange for, singing lessons, anything that she could do. And that's really where she found her voice for the first time, where she learned to sing. It's the darkest time in her life brought her this calling on her life too. And that's something that can really inspire all of us, that good can come from bad, right? The best is yet to come. And I think people just need to be encouraged in this moment. So all of the stories are unique on their own. Candace Cameron Bure, we talked about, how do you know it's time to walk away from a relationship or from a job? And then I had Maria Taylor, who I don't know if you watch sports, or if any of you watch sports. She's on ESPN. She's a sideline reporter, but she really talked about the fear of failure and how to push through that fear of failure. It's the most common fear that we deal with, something that I deal with a ton. And we had Kathy Lee on, how to branch out and how to try new things. And so it's just, Michael Strahan's episode's coming up soon. We've got Harry Connick Jr., who's got a really phenomenal story. He had a 0.8 GPA in high school. And he said music was the only thing that really made sense for him. So again, these stories are going to be very encouraging and very empowering, and you're going to be entertained, because just of the style, it's super casual and super conversational. This isn't a button-up journalist. This is like, hey, come have a seat at the table. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. Yeah. So I just really want to that's the Enneagram 8 in me. I want to champion people where they are and help them in any way possible. And one of the ways is through the podcast. So
yeah, the Paula Faris podcast that you can get wherever you get podcasts. It's really incredible.
Thanks for the plug, Lynn.
Yeah, girl, I'm here for you. I'm going to do the book, the podcast, all of it. We're in this together. When it comes to the doubt, I see all of the things that you're doing and the confidence, your capabilities, but everyone, it's human to have that doubt. What did I just do? Did I just ruin my career? Mm-hmm. What do you do to chill the chatter when you go to that place of, oh my gosh, I just screwed up. I shouldn't have followed that calling.
Mm-hmm. I think, well, it's interesting you say that. Like about a week and a half ago, I just had a moment, and something, it's what's difficult is, like, you can have a really good day, you can be in a really good headspace, and then something can trigger you. And I had a trigger, and I don't really even know what it was. And it just set me off. Like, I started doubting myself. I started doubting what's like my capabilities. doubting this new space that I'm supposed to walk into. And I called one of my dear friends, one of my MTPs, okay,
Yay.
my most trusted person. And this person, she's not just the type of person that will speak life into you, but she'll call me out too when I need to be called out. And so I called her up and I was like, I'm struggling right now. I was super vulnerable, told her what was going on. Talking it out really was something that helped me, and just having her pray with me. I'm a person of deep faith. I was like, just pray that, because a lot of the battle that we're trying to win is the battle in our mind. And that self-doubt, questioning where you're supposed to be, it's so normal. And I think normalizing it is one of the first things, saying, I needed to say positive affirmations over and over and over, like, just repeating them every time I felt like my mind was waging war. So repeating these positive affirmations, burning those pathways, because we have negative pathways where we've repeated those lies to ourselves, and we need to repeat the truth. You replace the lie with the truth. Things I'm learning from guests on my podcast. Replace the lie with truth and say positive things and burn the neural pathways in your brain. Okay. So calling my friend, she prayed for me, saying positive affirmations, just remembering it's okay to not be okay. All right. You're not on an island. We all struggle with self-doubt. We all do. And it's something that I've had to accept. It's nothing I'm going to ever conquer. It's something I'm going to have to face the rest of my life. But when I have a setback, to not beat myself up so much for it, just say, this is normal. I know how to get out of it. I'm going to call an MTP. I'm going to say, I'm going to ask him or her to pray for me. I'm going to say positive affirmations over and over and over, and remind myself of who I am, who I was uniquely created to be. And I'm not going to buy the lie. And you continue. Some people do gratitude journals, which is something that also helps, but just living in that mindset of gratitude. But so often that war, everything starts in your mind. It really does. But I say, when I had times where I made a decision, I was like, oh my gosh, like the first line of my book is, there's no rational way to kill your career, where I really felt like I did. And I think just finding that peace in your spirit is really important. Even if you're not a person of faith, you can call it your gut instinct. Finding the peace. If you have a peace, you'll know it. If you have a peace about something, you proceed. If you don't have a peace, pause. Okay. But just because you have a peace about something doesn't mean you won't experience fear. Fear is one of those things that it's the dream slayer. It can paralyze us. Fear is normal. If you feel fear, guess what? We're all feeling fear, even if you have a peace about it. But so often we mistake fear for, oh, that's my intuition telling me that I just did the wrong thing. No. Mm-hmm. If you have a peace about it in your spirit, proceed. But if you have fear, I say, if you have a peace, proceed, but expect and anticipate the fear. And there's nothing wrong with you. It's totally normal to feel fear, but it's about pressing into that fear. And one thing that helps me press into that fear, I know I've done the right thing, but I'm scared as hell about it, right? Is to say, instead of what's the worst thing that could happen, I say, what's the best thing that can happen if I press into this? Not allowing the fear to own you, because that's what it does. And looking back at other times in your life where you have stepped into your fear and remembering how empowering that was. So thinking about, instead of, oh, the worst thing that can happen, ask yourself, what's the best thing that can happen? And one of the best things that can happen is you don't regret that you allowed your fear to paralyze you, right? So peace, proceed, expect, anticipate fear, and it's up to you to press into it. Nobody's going to press into it for you. So, but just asking yourself the right questions when you're in that moment. Not, oh, is this going to be the biggest mistake? But what's the best thing that can happen? What about the other times I pressed into my fear? How great did I feel? I didn't allow that fear to conquer me and to paralyze me and to cripple me.
I am taken with what everybody is saying in the comments too. That was just really powerful.
Oh, thank you.
Incredibly powerful and so true. And I think a lot of this wisdom comes from your faith. I just think that so much of this, and I've had this conversation with Max when he was on, of why do you think that there are some people that choose to politicize faith? that if you are faithful, that must mean X, or that must be this. And I worry about that for my own children, because faith is such a huge part of our lives that it's almost like now it's a bad thing to have conversations about faith. It's how do you deal with that? Because it is such a huge part of your life. And how do you talk about that with your children?
I think it's a tough question to answer, because unfortunately, those in the faith circles have politicized it, because, oh, if you're a Christian, you're a Republican, or if you're a Christian, you're this. God doesn't ascribe to any sort of any political party, right? Mm-hmm. And I say at the end of the day, like, we are supposed to respect those in government, but we know who for me, like, I know the true authority in my life, and it's not government, but I will respect the government that has been placed in my life. But God doesn't ascribe, we as people of faith need to stop ascribing faith to politics, right? And remember, like, yes, you vote for who you want, but I'll always remember this quote from Marco Rubio. It was during the primaries, I think back in 2016. He's like, instead of worrying about who's in the White House, worry about who's in your own house, right? I think it's up to us to determine what goes on in our home, and it's the family structure where that should determine our family's choices and our moral code and our moral conduct. So unfortunately, I think, you hear political leaders that are endorsing certain I don't think we should. I think you should keep church and state, you should keep politics and faith separate for a reason. Jesus wasn't a Republican. Jesus wasn't a Democrat. We know what Jesus stood for. He stood for love, right? For loving people, loving the sinners, seeing the best in people, loving people that weren't worthy of love. So I think instead of like shoving what we believe down people's throat, they'll know you're a person of faith. I'm a Christian. They'll know I'm a Christian by my love for people. And if I don't love people first, it doesn't matter what I say, right? It has no bearing. If I'm a total jerk and I treat somebody poorly, do you think it's not going to matter that I'm like, and come to church with me? They're going to be like, yeah, you're a hypocrite. You're a fraud. Yeah. So I think just, from a faith perspective, I try to keep those separate. You can believe, and that was another thing with, I working at the View. People are like, how can you work at the View? I'm like, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter our differences. You were created in God's image, and I was created in God's image. You were fearfully and wonderfully knit in your mother's womb. I was fearfully knit in my mother's womb. That's all I need to know to love and respect you. It doesn't matter that we have a lot of differences, okay? And just because you disagree with me doesn't mean that I'm right, you're wrong, and you're wrong, or vice versa, right? But just being able to lead with love. I love you. I see you as a human being. I don't see you as a Republican. I don't see you as a libertarian. I don't see you as a Democrat. I see you as someone who was made in the image of God. And that's where it has to come back to, that respect and that love. But we've done a poor job of politicizing it. We really have. But leading with love is where it all starts. And I don't want to sound like rainbows and unicorns. That's not it. But it's like getting back to the tenets of Christianity. They'll know you're Christians by your love for one another. Just peeling it back.
Oh, this has been incredibly inspirational and powerful. Courtney Walker, who's a good friend of mine, actually just chimed in and said the exact same thing. She had put out a promo in her stories that it's her birthday coming up. Happy birthday, Courtney. And she wants your book called out. Oh. So hopefully her husband is watching and sends her their book over. So Paula Faris'
awesome. Happy birthday, Courtney.
Is called out. Her podcast, the Paula Faris podcast, is found where all podcasts are. And I just want to thank you for sharing these incredible pieces of wisdom, but also for just being vulnerable and sharing also your fears, because I think that that's what inspires people the most.
Yeah, I just want people to know, look, it's okay to not be okay. And we're all in this together, and we all have good days and bad days. And I think just living a real, authentic life of who you are, remembering why you're here, and remembering your true purpose is not tied into doing is, my true purpose is to love people. And that's what I want to do. But again, we're all in this together, and we're all on the journey together. So I just hope people were encouraged by the conversation, and reach out to me if you want to on Instagram. I'm not great on Twitter or Facebook, and I'm not tech savvy. So Instagram's really the only place I know how to respond.
Paula, congratulations on everything. And thank
Thank
you for
you,
doing
Lynn.
such good, important work.
Thank you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for having me on, Lynn. I appreciate it. God bless you. And thanks for the work that you're doing. Thanks for the work you're doing.
Thank you. It was so great talking to you.
Thank you, Lynn. God bless. See you guys.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye.